Welcome everyone to the first after Easter of our Fashion Means Business fashion talks. Today we're going to have a slightly different format, as we're going to be having a round table discussion, as we are joined today by a group of businesses, representatives from various businesses that are here to share with us the New Cotton project of which they're working on. So it's a roundtable discussion that's going to give us insights into the EU-funded New Cotton project that aims to contribute to a circular economy in which textiles are reused, recycled, or regenerated into new garments. The session today is going to be chaired by Ellie Savage, who is the Innovation Project Communication Manager at Fashion for Good. And she is going to be chairing the roundtable. And we are joined by three individuals who are representing 3 of the 12 fashion companies participating in the project. And that is Traci Kinden, who's the founder of REvolve Waste, Kirsi Niinimäki, who's the Associate Professor in Design and Fashion Research at Aalto University, and Tracy Terho, who is the Key Account Director at Infinited Fiber Company. And their discussion today is going to be giving us insights into the initial stages of this fantastic EU-funded initiative. So if I could hand over to you, Ellie, and you could introduce Fashion for Good and the project, and then over to the roundtable discussion. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Yep, so my name is Ellie and I've been working on the communications at Fashion for Good and specifically working on this EU-funded New Cotton project. So just a short intro from me regarding Fashion for Good. So they're a global initiative with the aim to make all fashion good. So we have a museum in the headquarters in Amsterdam, and this is the world's first museum dedicated to sustainable fashion and innovation. So please do visit when you're allowed in person. But they're also doing some really amazing virtual guided tours, and they have a new exhibition called Grow. So they're on sale now. There's a bit of a shameless plug for you all. They also have a Fashion for Good innovation platform, and this platform brings together innovators and international fashion labels and manufacturers to really drive and scale transformation within the industry. But today we'll be talking about the New Cotton project. So we are looking specifically at redesigning the value in waste. So the agenda today, I'm going to give a quick intro on what the New Cotton project is. Then we will meet our panelists, then have some pre-prepared discussion points, and then there's an opportunity for you, the audience, to participate with questions. So I think if you submit those, Hannah will be managing those, so you can do that throughout the session. We will try and answer as many as we can at the end. So the New Cotton project, it's a 3-year-long EU-funded project. What makes this a really unique and interesting project is with a consortium of 12 different partners throughout the supply chain. So it aims to demonstrate an entirely circular model for garment production. So by the end of the 3 years, and the project started in November, so we're already a little way through, by the end of it, we hope to have a scalable solution which can be replicated throughout the industry. So the consortium partners are looking at every element of the supply chain. So we've got research, sorting, processing, manufacturing, and ultimately producing collections for the H&M group and for Adidas. There's also data and research happening alongside this, and participants from various institutions and universities. And as I mentioned, the communications are being run by Fashion for Good. So the main innovator in this project are called Infinited Fiber Company, and they are based in Finland, and they have really amazing technology that can take textile waste and regenerate it into new fibres that look and feel like cotton, hence the name, the New Cotton Project. So the fibres are, the creative fibres are then biodegradable and can be recycled again and again. And Infinited Fibre Company, so Kirsi at Infinited Fibre Company will talk more about this later on. So the session we have today really aims to address what is happening as part of the project right now, what's happened so far, and looking at current waste streams and how we can really redefine the value in textile waste. So today's session we have Kirsi Terho, who is the account director from Infinited Fibre Company. We have Traci Kinden, the founder of REvolve Waste, and Kirsi Niinimäki from Aalto, who is the associate professor at Aalto University in Finland. Note that we have two Kirsis, so Tracy wanted to be called Kirsi as well, which is would be even more interesting. So I think we'll refer to Kirsi Terho as Kirsi from Infinited Fibre, and then Kirsi Niinimäki from Aalto University. So to start off the questions, I think to sort of introduce yourselves. So this is a question for all of you, but perhaps Kirsi from Infinited Fibre Company could start this. Please, could you introduce yourself, who your experience, who you're representing, and most importantly, why you are participating in the New Cotton Project. So perhaps I will hand over to Kirsi at Infinited Fibre Company to kick us off.
Thanks, Ellie. Hi, everybody. I'm Kirsi Terho. I'm the key account director at Infinited Fibre. My role is more or less to be engaging with the brands, the global fashion brands, and they are the ones that are our clients at the moment. We are kind of like a crazy punch. We wanted to take the engineering to the level where we can talk directly with the brands also. So this is a kind of like a odd angle that we are taking. But why we are in the New Cotton Project is that when we started our own project, the Infinited Fibre Project, we very quickly realized that there isn't probably let's say collection of textiles available as a certain extent to go to the global scale. There isn't, the whole thing haven't been figured out thoroughly. So that's why we wanted to just combine every bit and piece from the stream, and we started to call out our friends in the industry, and we got this amazing bunch of companies and people around us. And now we are just heading to the 3-year program and getting to the, let's say, on the important things that you need to have when you are going to scale.
Tracy, perhaps you want to go next?
Certainly can. My name is Traci Kinden. I am here with REvolve Waste. REvolve is a consulting company that I started in 2013. And I'm a technical subject matter expert. So I'm basically a giant nerd when it comes to what are the textile resources that leak out waste. What are the ways that those resources could be put back into the system? And then how do you, meaning recycling technologies, and then how do you connect all of those pieces in a circular system? That's the area I've specialized in for the last approximately 8 years. And I've known Infinited Fibre Company for at least, probably 5 years. I've met and have been talking to them. When I learned about the New Cotton Project, it was very exciting for me to be able to contribute some of this nerdiness and help give a better perspective on available materials as inputs and the system more generally. So it's good technology, good partners, and yeah, it's a good place for me to learn and also contribute so that others can get further faster.
Great, thank you, Tracy. And Kirsi from Aalto, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm the other Kirsi, coming from the academy side. So Aalto University, of course, we are the researcher partner in here in New Cotton, and in Aalto University, I'm running a research group which is called Fashion Textile Futures. sustainability is really core of our research and textile and fashion field. And we have quite wide approach for sustainability. So we are really looking into this more like system level. So studying what that means from the design perspective, manufacturing, consumption, as well as from the business point of view. So our role in New Cotton is really like we try to enhance the ecosystem building. This is a fantastic project because the whole supply chain is involved. And we are really trying to do this kind of industrial level demonstration, which also means that something which looks nice on the paper or on theory might have different kind of problems when we then deal with this practical aspect of circularity, for example. And of course, this kind of like a value creation and business models are also included in here. So this is really interesting from that point of view. So we are trying to help stakeholders as well as we are trying to construct new knowledge, of course, for the academic audience, but also we try to publish openly some of our findings so that we can help the whole field towards transformation towards sustainability.
Great, thank you, Kirsi. So perhaps we can go to Kirsi at Infinity Fiber Company, and maybe you could tell us a bit more about the technology that you've created and how that fits into the New Cotton project.
Sure. So the technology itself, that is, of course, one of the core things in here, because without the technology that we have been created, it might be impossible to have this kind of project today. But like I was saying before, even it comes to us, things need to happen. So, for example, textile sorting is very important in that sentence. But when we go to our process, we start with the textile waste. So what needs to happen is that first there is textile waste that has a lot of impurities in it. We are interested in the cotton part. So what we do, we make like a pre-treatment of the materials where we get rid of the colors and polyesters, if there's elastanes or anything else, we get rid of all that. And in the end, what is left is pure cellulosic materials like cotton. After that, when we have pure cotton, we go to something called carbamation. It sounds terrible, but what it really is that we take the cellulose and we force them to connect with urea. And we create cellulose carbamide powder. That is a brown powder. That brown powder can be shipped around, and then it goes to the wet spinning plant. In wet spinning plant, what we do, we take the brown powder, we dissolve that into liquid. Now the old garments have been totally forgotten all its history because it's in a liquid form. Then we extrude the liquid through very thin nozzles into acid bath. And at the moment, the alkaline liquid touches the acid liquid, the crystallization starts to happen and the cellulose comes out. And we get a continuous filament out from there. After that, we need to stretch it, get some tenacity on it. Then we go and cut it to the staple length. We wash it and we bale it, and then it goes to the next step, which is the yarn spinning. That is the core of our technology.
Amazing, thank you very much. So Kirsi from Aalto, part of your participation in the New Cotton project is obviously research is a large part of this. Could you tell us about current circular business models and the use of textile waste? i.e., what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve here?
Yes, well, I think that the audience quite well known about the current situation, that the material throughput in the system is really fast, meaning that actually there are a lot of textile waste. So we are using garments really short time, and they begin to be waste quite fast. And we don't currently there are not effective system what to do with the waste. So most of them actually are burned as a new energy. But of course, in the future, we have to understand that we have to close the material loop much effectively. And we have to understand that actually waste is really valuable source for the industry. So we have to bring back everything what we have produced. So this, of course, means that there will be different kind of like policy actions to enhance this development. But of course, we really have to also change the whole business understanding, how we make business, or sorry, how we make the waste as a part of the fashion business, and how actually the value could be created when the waste is actually part of the circulation. So in that sense, I think that currently when we talk about business models and moving from the linear to the circular one, so we very often concentrate, for example, the extended of the use time of the garments. Of course, that's part of the business, but what then happens when the garment begins to be a waste? So actually right now, the most of the recycling happens as a downcycling, meaning that actually the value doesn't really stay in there. So there we have a lot of this kind of like a mechanical recycling, and that needs new, quite a lot of virgin material so that we can keep the quality of the yarn high enough. So in this kind of new technology, relying on chemical recycling, we can actually upcycle and we can keep the value. So we can produce high quality regenerated fibers again. So that's the future's way to go. And of course, that means that the business understanding also have to change, and how then include the waste as part of the business models.
Great, thank you. And Tracy, I mean, I'm sure you've got some views on that as well, but from your point of view, can you sort of set the scene of how the current waste streams look at the moment?
Absolutely. So there are a few different, call them classifications or types of textiles that leak out of the system as waste or could be waste. The first is post-industrial materials, and these are things like cutting room floor scraps, also potentially yarn, remnants of yarn, rolled goods, etc. A lot of those have an end market. Most of them do actually. Post-industrial textile is reasonably available and homogeneous in production regions, and that homogeny or similarity is really key. Cotton has a strong end market. So if there's anything that's roughly 80% cotton or better, depending, there's quite often in terms of clippings, a good end market for it. Rolled goods often have end markets, et cetera. So post-industrial is reasonably available. Cotton moves, cotton has market. A lot of it goes to India, but there are also a fair amount going to Western Europe and North Africa and other regions. In fact, Reverse Resources is a digital platform. They've released a good amount of information on these types of materials if you look at their website. Post-consumer is the one that everybody talks about. It's the one that is seen as the biggest problem. And while post-industrial is large volumes, fairly consistent in batches, post-consumer is a hot mess, basically. It's this isn't my analogy, but it's a good one, and that is separating post-consumer textiles into homogeneous streams is like trying to unscramble an egg. It's very mixed up. It's expensive to prepare for recycling. And one thing, if you take away anything from this chat, from my side, it would be understand a couple of things. All of this waste on the post-consumer side, it's seen as a big opportunity, and it is, but there has to be a business case to actually get those items into recycling. So to increase the amount of collection, which is a big topic people are talking about, and to get it into these various end markets, including recycling technologies like infinited fiber, there has to be a business case for that. So today, reuse actually subsidizes all of the collection, the sorting, and recycling that happens alongside reuse. That means the margin on the reusable materials is enough to cover everything else that happens. And if we drastically increase the amount of materials that get collected into the system, there has to be end markets for those materials. And not only that, the handling of those materials has to be economically viable. Post-consumer textile is the most difficult thing to recycle because, as I said, it's the most mixed up or the most variable, and it's the most expensive to handle. And so it is the big opportunity. It is the complex opportunity. So that's part of what we're trying to unpack here in the project. There's also commercial streams, so workwear and hospitality linens. This is kind of a middle of finished product, but large homogeneous batches often. So this is kind of a middle ground. The thing to remember in all of this is that the most accessible materials have end markets. There are end markets for a lot of this stuff. So the materials that are compatible for recycling processes also have existing end markets. So textile to textile recyclers have to be aware of and compete with them. So overall, you know, there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of material available, but it's not as simple as, we'll just get more, we'll collect more, and magically the fairy dust will sprinkle itself into recycling and then it's all circular. There's a lot of work to be done.
I need to add on that. So because we have the audience that we do at the moment, the message for you is to really design for circularity already. So that would be the best possible option.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tracy, well, anyone can chip in on this. What about sort of overstock issues for brands?
Sure, I'll be quick on this one and then turn it over to others. This has been an issue, especially when the pandemic about this time last year, there was a collective, oh my goodness, what do we do from the brand side? And thankfully I think that resolved, well, it didn't resolve itself, but hopefully wasn't as horrible of a problem as people were scared about. But essentially the thing to remember about that overstock is that brands absolutely dictate what happens. Some say this product cannot go into other reuse markets. It has to be destroyed, recycled, but basically that means it's no longer a usable product. And some on the other end of the spectrum say, yeah, we can send these into reuse markets as long as it doesn't cannibalize our existing business. And brands are 100% in the driver's seat there. Reuse markets do like those materials because it's premium unused stuff. And so the brands that I've spoken to over the course of the last year about this particular issue, we always strongly encourage them. Consider reuse. It just makes a lot of sense. Existing secondhand companies and overstock brokers that were already, you know, in the world, they went after these items pretty early, and new platforms popped up as well. And I believe that they did a decent job in trying to absorb those materials. And moving forward, hopefully this overstock piece is slowly decreasing, or not slowly, but there's just less overstock over time because production is getting smarter, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So Kirsi from Aalto, what is the best way to be able to guide development to a circular economy? Does that, you mentioned policy briefly earlier on, does that include policy, for example, like the EU, for example, as per this project?
Yes, of course, the legislation and policy is the fastest ways to make the change in the system. And currently what is happening in European Union level, so there are a lot of discussion about the green strategy for textiles, extended producer responsibility, meaning that actually producers, importers have to collect back all the waste that they are producing. So we are going towards this way that actually there are different kind of pressures coming from the policy making that textile and fashion industry businesses are seeing that actually they have to change their practices. So, and of course, then there are leading companies who see that, well, there's an opportunity to be more sustainable. So it's not only this kind of pressure, but also an opportunity. But of course, that means that, well, there has to be a technology available. There has to be a functioning system. And right now, quite many countries are taking this problem seriously and constructing the system, for example, how to collect back and where this textile waste are sorted, for example, and who is then the technology or the companies who are then using the textile waste. So this is also seen as some societies see that this is an opportunity to be like a leading in the sustainable development. So in that sense, a lot of things are happening in European Union level currently. So, and that of course it's really, really good ones, but we also talk about with the policymakers that, well, how to make the whole industry, how to take them in this transformation that, well, there might be that now it's more like guiding, but might be that in the future there are some kind of different taxations, for example, that is forced to change the practices towards more sustainable ones. So this is actually quite interesting times that we are living. So because there have been a lot of let's say that many years already discussion about the problems in especially in the fast fashion sector, but now even the policymakers are taking this industry quite seriously, and the business models have to change.
From my perspective, I think that, like Tracy was saying, there needs to be a business case. So if the legislators, they can really drive that also. So if they are really adjusting the legislations the way that it is really reflecting to the problem also, that is a big thing that really can guide the whole business case in this also. So for example, if there is extended product liability for the brands, so they need to pay for really just putting something to the market already at that stage, and that is then used in the recycling part. That might help a business cases a lot.
It sounds like we need to have a whole other session about policy, I think. It's a whole other thing. Okay, so I think this one's probably directed at Tracy and then Kirsi from Infinitive Fibre Company, but from a waste collection perspective, what is actually needed for this, for this example of the new cotton project, and I guess like subsequent projects to become successful and scalable and become the norm? I appreciate that's not a small question I've just asked.
Sure, and instead of, well, I think one of the most important things that's maybe not a direct, it doesn't seem directly correlated to the waste collection, but it absolutely is the recycling technologies need to have as broad of an input specification as possible. Now, the technology that Kirsi described it's super cool. It's not something that you can throw everything into. That level of engineering, and believe me, it is quite high. That level of engineering isn't just, it can take everything. So there's a balance there. But in order for the waste collection piece to scale, to be able to feed recycling technologies need to have as few barriers as possible to bringing in materials. Even within cotton materials, if metal is a contaminant that can't be accepted, and polyester can't be accepted, and not even metal, if polyester can't be accepted and elastane can't be accepted, you have officially deleted a lot of materials for consideration for your inputs, and you've drastically increased the price. So it's these sorts of little things that actually will help the waste collection piece become more, scale up, become less tricky. Market prices have to actually support collection and handling, and the policy instruments help there. Things like EPR. France has done a really a lot of work in EPR for the last 10 or 12 years. But EPR is not the only thing. There's different policy instruments that can really help, maybe not even directly impact market prices, but for example, reduce the cost of handling materials, et cetera. So there's this this market component that's got to be there. And then circular business models on the brand side. We tend to talk about circularity still in a linear way. We don't think we do, but we do. We look at solutions as a, well, what do we drop into this slot? But that's still a linear solution, a circular component in a linear system as a solution. That's not the way we need to be doing this. From the brand side and the circular business model side that's talked about a lot on the brands, there needs to be holistic consideration for design for recyclability. Thanks again, Kirsi, for that one. But also, cyclability in multiple product cycles, thinking about that and thinking about how recyclable something is from a design stage, using recycled content, speccing it, even though it costs more from the brand side, creates that market pull for recycled fibers and content, and then take back mechanisms, right? So a lot of this design for recyclability or new business models looks at reuse or different ways to get multiple product cycles onto a single item. And what that also does is not only extends the lifespan, but it creates an embedded take back mechanism, an embedded collection mechanism that has other economic pieces in there to support it other than just collection, sorting, and reselling. There's something else in there, and foreign nonprofit partners can participate in that take back mechanism as well. So it's really broad specs, supporting market prices, and really holistic circular business models that touch on multiple components, and that will lead to the scale. Those waste collectors know what they know their business. It's thin margins. They're really good at it. Typically, they just need that little business case, and you'll see that waste collection piece increase.
Can I add something in there? So I think from the technology perspective, it's also like Tracy was saying, so we need to handle the impurities, and there needs to be a certain amount of impurities that we can take in to make this a business case, because we know at the moment, if we are only purchasing as a feedstock like 100% cotton bed sheets, we are not ever going to get into a huge scale. So we need to be able to handle some amounts of impurities in our process also. So that is a very important part when we think about if there is newcomers, to understand already when they start to develop their new innovations, to understand that this is something that you need to consider already in the very early stages.
Great, thank you. And I think we've obviously addressed some of this already, but a question to all of you, what do you think the future looks like for waste management in the fashion industry? Perhaps Kirsi from Aalto could start on that one.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that we slowly begin to construct totally new kind of system for circularity. So I think that this is really early stage, and of course we are talking a lot about these kind of blended materials and those kind of things which are obstacles currently, but might be that there are also new innovations coming. So for example, what Kirsi was already mentioning, that the blended materials or metals in the yarn, so whatever, those might also provide new kind of like material attributes in the future, when we just find a way how to include that in the yarn. So for example, metals can actually provide totally new kind of yarn types for us. So this is something that, well, the technology and the research goes on really fast currently, but of course we have to take step by step. And from the design point of view, I'm quite sure that we are taking these regulations or guidelines quite seriously. So in the future, we will have garments which are designed and manufactured so that we know exactly that what are the life cycles for these garments, and how it is possible to recycle the garment and the fabric yarns inside it several times. So this is also something that it's quite new knowledge for us if you think about this industrial design point of view. But that means that, well, in the future this might be much more manageable or control the whole material flows throughout the several life cycles of the garments. But currently there's a mess, and we have so much of this post-consumer textile waste that we don't know what to do with that. But I'm quite sure that we will also find ways how to collect and how to sort and what to do with these kind of mixed materials. So I see that this is quite interesting, but this needs a lot of new knowledge and a lot of wide collaboration between different partners, so that we can really solve all the problems in different steps of the supply chain. But I'm quite sure that this also provides totally new business opportunities in the future. I'm quite sure that actually the textile waste will be a big part of the business in the future. And then we combine, when we are able to combine all this kind of data behind of the textile waste, so that we know exactly what kind of textile waste is flowing or floating there around, so that we can make a better business with the textile waste. I'm quite sure that that will provide totally new system for us in the future.
I think there's also something to be said for, well, I'm not thinking of the right way to say this, but we're using the terms waste management, but really what we are talking about is managing resources. And I think there's even if the system on the surface looks similar, and it's not a total redesign of the system, which might happen, and that would be a good thing, but if we just make that shift in the way we do business to the management of resources instead of the management of waste, that's kind of a big deal. And then the other thing that I would encourage all of you as upcoming industry professionals to think about is, we talk a lot about the fashion industry, fashion, but textiles is so much bigger than just fashion. We like to say things about fast fashion. I certainly am not a huge proponent of fast fashion, but household textiles and floor coverings and geotextiles, there's this whole suite of things that we really need to think about when we think about that circulation of resources or management of resources. And so I think if we can, if we look forward to the future for what resource management looks like for textiles and start thinking about it in those terms, we'll get out of this problem of, well, it's the brands that need to do this, and oh, it's the consumers that should do that, and it's all of us that need to manage these resources more effectively.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the question about what fashion is in the future, that is a huge question. I don't have an answer for that, but I have an answer for what is in it here for Infinity Fiber. So we are actually ready to scale. So you will be able to buy garments from the Adidas and H&M during this project. So that is already a big step. We are planning on building up a factory that is operational in 2024. So there will be something happening already. It's not just talks.
Excellent, very exciting. And Tracy, I know we've covered parts of this already, but from REvolve Waste perspective, like, what is your dream idea circular system for textile waste management or for resources?
The perfect system is, who knows what the ideal or perfect system is, but exactly, but I know that it contains some things. The first is digitization. And that goes back to the resource management question. The more that we digitize and the more that we have access to this type of information, the better off we're all going to be. And it goes all the way through forecasting on the brand retailer side, technologies like Infinited being able to plan where their materials are coming from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in advance. So there's this digitization piece that has to happen. Policymakers need to, or in the ideal system, policymakers are really embracing the opportunity. They're defining the metrics and the data that they need to see and manage to be able to set policy, course correct over time, and develop markets. There's this public-private sector piece that can be connected. I really believe that. And the ideal circular system enables the public sector to make the right size policy, not too much, not too little. And it enables the public sector to really scale based on market forces. Those two things are critical, and equally important in my mind. And then I think brands and retailers embrace accountability for those resources, and also want to see them circulating because they've shifted their business toward, again, this management of resources and user experience within those cycles. Secondary materials handlers are increasing their throughput. It's economically viable. There's a lot of good work going on in the secondhand industry. I know TexAid has done a lot of really good work. There are others as well, but they always stand out in my mind as a company that is consistently pushing and seeing what's possible as a secondhand industry company. We're looking at generally in this ideal system, materials cascade. So reuse first, always, right? Reuse, then recycle, then downcycle, landfill, incineration, landfill hierarchy. So in this system, that's happening as well. And we don't let resources leak out because we've designed stuff well, because we've digitized those resources, because we know where it's all at and where it's all going, and we know how to prevent waste from even being an issue. That's, yeah, the not so brief answer.
Thank you so much. So I think a final question to all of you, unless there's something burning you think we haven't discussed, but what is really needed to accelerate and scale a fully circular textiles model? Perhaps, Kirsi from Infinity Fiber, thank you.
I think that to accelerate, we need to demand. Demand is driving the brands, and brand demand is driving the supply chain. And I think that if the demand is there, everything will happen. And of course, there will be a lot of, let's say, things that you need to figure out when you buy, for example. So if you really go to the store, you think about what you buy, you think about, is that already recycled? Is this something that is not using virgin raw materials? That is driving the demand. If you go to, for example, the Zalando website and you ask sustainable options, that is a signal for them to understand that, okay, they are searching for this. So we need to provide. I think that is what is really shifting the gear.
Thank you. Is there Kirsi from Aalto you would like to go next?
Yes, of course, we need this good examples, and I think this new cotton is really good one because we can show that this is possible and what that means when it's possible. So this kind of like a leading examples that how to do that in the business wise also, so that it's profitable. And of course, when we think about, for example, the designing, so in the future we just have to have also that kind of guidelines that each product content, there's certain amount of recycled content in the material or fiber level, for example, that it's must in the future that we can't use this virgin material so much as we are doing currently. And of course, if you think about that, well, also this kind of thinking that we still try to extend the use time of the garments or textiles. So we really try to prolong the product lifetimes. That's of course the part of it, but how then also that aspect could be part of the business models. So it's not only on when you talk about circular economy, we shouldn't only talk about the waste and waste handling. It's actually the whole original design and how we can actually control the lifetimes better and try to also provide like a better satisfaction for the consumers. And of course, it's also the consumer side, as Kirsi already mentioned, that actually we also have to show that, well, this is the future's fashion, and it's like a must. And this is quite interesting that when you are talking with the consumers, or even when you are talking with the companies, so actually they are quite many of them are taking this seriously and begin to show our publish even they like value based, that actually this is the part of the business, that actually we should also turn to the value discussion, that actually when you talk about this kind of more important aspect, that why we are doing this and why sustainability is the future. So there are this kind of like environmental values, and of course that's important for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely agree across the board. It will be quite interesting to see how all these things come out in the next few years. And I think consumers can be trained. We've been trained into many things, whether we realize it or not. And I think there's some thought that needs to happen there around what do we establish as the new normal. But for me, the two things that stand out are digitization and policy. The more time I spend on this topic, the more I'm starting to realize that those two things are the keys to unlocking so many other things. We don't know enough about those material resources today. And if we know about what's in those material resources that are leaking out, it's the answer or a partial answer to a lot of really big questions we don't have answers to. We know what the waste problem looks like in more detail. And if the policy is supportive of changing the way that things are currently happening, there's so much opportunity there. So those are the things I look forward to most.
Great, thank you so much. Very insightful. Hannah, I think, are there some questions that have come in?
Yeah, so thank you all of you for your valuable insights. And yes, we have a few questions that have come in. So I'm going to start off with a question from Jessica Saunders. She's asking, she says she's working in the area of e-textiles and looking at where there may be a need for specific legislation relating to e-textiles. And she was just wondering whether you come across any e-textiles yet in your recycling efforts.
That is probably my area of expertise. So we haven't been really testing everything yet. So regarding e-textiles, I don't think that is something that has been really commonly coming to the recycling yet. So that is something that needs to be still tested. Of course, if we talk about the e-textiles and how that will be then processed in the future, that is more or less a design thing also. So this is something that you need to design to be recycled also. There is also a possibility to, for example, add tracers in the yarns and tracers in the let's say fibers even in a crystallization process. And so that could be something that could be a solution for the e-textiles of the future also.
Great, thank you.
Perhaps I can add here still something. Yes, e-textiles are currently really problematic from this waste handling point of view, because they are treated as electronic waste. So it's really problematic to separate the materials, for example, in that manner that you can keep the textile as well as the electronic part. So they are really problematic currently.
Okay,
but the good thing is that they are easy to identify from the patch, isn't it, Tracy?
But not easy to work with.
Yeah, I mean, so I was working with a group of students from the Netherlands recently, and they were looking into policy at a very high level. And as they were going through all of the various recommendations that have come out in reports in the last few years, one of the comments that they made was, what do you mean this hasn't been done already? What do you mean there's no policy to deal with this waste problem generally? And where I'm going with this is, I think, yeah, absolutely, e-textiles are an issue and will be more of an issue as the smart textiles and even just technical textiles more and more on the market. But if you look at the size of the problem generally with textiles, and you look at where the big wins are, I'm gonna stick my neck out and make the assumption that e-textiles are probably not in the top 5 priority areas for the coming couple of years. It's probably something that's a little bit further downstream. Important, for sure, but there are a lot of other big hurdles that we need to get through as well.
Just not so important at the moment, but
it's all important, but
yeah, where to start? Okay, there's a question here from Weena, who's actually asking about the cost of the technology, Kirsi, that you were talking about. And whether or not this is beneficial from an economic point of view. And I suppose this goes a little bit back to the discussions talking about legislation and policies, but perhaps you could, just share a few insights into the cost of.
Yeah, so let's think about what is driving the cost. Of course, it's how you process the material. So, for example, if the feedstock that comes in is very mixed waste, it takes a lot more money to get rid of all the things that we don't need in there. So that is something that we need to find a good way to balance that. What comes in and what is the cost of really getting rid of the things that we don't need in our process. That is one thing. That if we think about the future and really how this will be then implemented in the collections, I think in the first factory is probably somewhere in the branded viscose level, the price of the fiber. But when you go into the future and we are licensing this technology out and really trying to spread this all around the world, then the really competition kicks in, and then we will be seeing probably a decline in prices, and that is getting more and more used in that sentence. I don't know if we are ever going to be competing with a cotton price. That is not something that I know, but I hope that we get to the price level that is something that it is usable for every single one. It's not something that is very niche. Can
I just ask, can the new cotton then be recycled again?
Yes, yes, it can, but it can go through our process again, probably once or twice if it's 100% only infinite fibers coming back. But if we add a little bit makeup, if there is some cotton garments coming with that, then we are in a better place. Then it can be recycled multiple times because it's our process is attacking to the cellulose chains that are longest first. So they're attacking to the cotton first, and then we are in a better site.
Okay, great, thank you. And then actually, I can't remember who mentioned this earlier, but one of you spoke about designing for circularity. So perhaps could any of you maybe shine some light on how do you design for circularity? Any advice for students or designers that may be listening today?
Yeah, perhaps I can say something for that. I can start, Kirsi, then to continue. Yes, that's quite interesting question because we have a certain kind of guidelines, but while the technologies are developing, so actually that knowledge is also under development. So while the technologies are getting more precise, so that also means that, okay, then we know that actually what kind of limitations there are, for example, from the design point of view. And then for example, when we talk about blends, so now we already know that, okay, certain amount of certain blends goes to this recycling technologies, but then there are some kind of limitations. So that means that, well, if we are really aiming for this design for recycling, that means that then we have to have some kind of limitations or guidelines in the future. But that also means that when we are designing the original textile or garment, that we know already that what is the end of the life and what kind of recycling that this textile or garment is meant for example. And of course, from this mechanical recycling is possible to put nearly everything in there, but that often means that then is downcycling, or we have to add quite a lot of these virgin materials to keep the quality of the yarn and textiles. So in that sense, we also have to have an optimal recycling paths for the end of the life of each product. But this is something that it's really developing alongside with the technical development.
Yeah, I totally agree with Kirsi, and I think that's at the moment what you could do is to really just if you use monomaterials, let's say labels can't be polyester, for example, but just make 100% cotton or 100% polyester. It's much more easier for everybody. So I think that is the basics of it. But in the future, of course, there will be a lot of definitions made probably on that area as well.
I can give you a couple of very practical. Attention designers and future product developers, do not use more than 2%. No, do not use more than 5% elastane unless it's critically necessary. Less than 2% is better. Do not blend more fibers for cost purposes. So if you have a polyester, acrylic, nylon, dog hair blended sweater, you've created a monster. Don't do it. The fewest fibers possible for the performance application, the better. A sustainable item is one that, yes, will last, but also it will last, it will perform, and it can be recycled through some sort of technology. The more fibers that you blend in there, the harder that becomes. But that's always a balance between performance, price, and durability, these sorts of things. Remember the elastane threshold, that kills so much stuff and it's really hard to see. Don't blend too many fibers, and don't make cheap stuff. I'll just stick my neck out and say it. Make stuff that lasts.
Very good advice. Actually, just on that and the sort of complexities of being able to sort of take out what you can use and what you can't use. There is a question here from Manuel Arias, who is from VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, who's actually just asking what happens to the impurities after the cotton is saved at infinited fiber? Are there waste streams being used or studied at the moment for those bits that you can't use in effect?
That is an excellent question. So if we think about what is coming in, basically it's the only interesting part is the polyester that is coming with the cotton or the cellulosic materials, because that is a majority what we get. And this is something that we know how to recover. We don't have that possibility at the moment, but this is something that might be in the future even interesting. But then it is more or less about we are cellulosic people. We are cellulose engineers, and so we are concentrating on that at the moment. And what we can do currently is that we can take everything that comes out. It is actually sludge of everything. There is colors, finishing chemicals, polyesters, everything in the same sludge. What we can do, we can evaporate the water out of it and get a kind of like a very thick sludge, and use that to recover as an energy and burn that in our stream. But the good thing is that even that part, that is not going to landfill. That is actually used for something, and that is the most important part.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And then I think we've got time for one more question. There's quite a few comments coming in about the customer. And in fact, we had a comment here from Ismay, who was wondering whether or not customers, knowing that their product can be recycled and the circularity might actually encourage the consumers to consume more. And then there's a further point raised by Sandra, who was talking about perhaps the quality of the fibers and fabrics that we find in the world of fashion, and our kind of love as consumers of cheap clothes, and our kind of appetite to consume extensively, whether or not there should be a kind of a cheap clothes tax or something similar, and actually Sandra suggests a sugar tax, something similar to that in the world of fashion.
I know I'm going to be probably the odd in here, so I'll let Kirsi and Tracy answer to this also. But from our perspective, as we are creating new technologies that can handle this, and technologies that can be really reusing what you're using now, you don't need to feel ashamed of using clothes, isn't it? When you know you can recycle it all over again. So I think, of course, you need to have a certain time span for the clothes you wear, and buy only what you love. That is probably my my take on that. But we don't need to be ashamed of wanting to wear nice clothes.
Okay, perhaps I can continue. So yes, I think that this is the critique which has been raising towards the circular economy, that it actually might it doesn't help the consumption of fashion. So I think that we have to, at the same time, when we are talking about how to handle the waste, how to close the material loop, we also have to discuss about more conscious consumption, and we really have to cultivate our consumer side, who we all are actually. And I think that there are actually quite positive marks already. We can see that, well, for example, this second-hand fashion is emerging. Even big brands are taking that as part of their own businesses. There are a lot of these kind of mending or repair activities happening from provided by the companies or by the consumers themselves, learning new skills of mending garments, for example. So I think that we really have to also challenge this kind of the aesthetic of fashion, that what actually is, that we are not only like praising the new, for example, that actually this kind of vintage fashion or prolonging the use or mending, or we can be a little bit more creative as a consumer. So, and even talking about that, okay, when you extend and how much you have to extend the use of the garments, so there are actually a big environmental savings, and there are these reports showing that, well, it doesn't mean that you have to keep some garment forever and forever, but even this kind of smaller, like a 6 months extension of the use time actually gives quite good savings from the environmental impact point of view. So I think that we just have to have that discussion going on at the same time when we are talking about closing the material loop.
Yeah, I think right on both of you in terms of the idea of fashion and aesthetics changing is not bad. But one of my favorite pieces of this concept of the circular economy is decoupling economic growth from the use of resources. And if we can do that, then right on. Fashion, like, I'm not a fashion person. I joke about being a textile person, not a fashion person, and it's usually obvious from what I'm wearing that that is indeed the case. So, you know, a little bit outside of my own comfort zone, but talking about fashion, but I don't think necessarily that changing aesthetic is bad. It goes back to that core principle of let's manage those resources. Let's create experiences. Fashion and the consumption in a linear, happens to be a linear way now, but it's really about joy and expressing yourself. But you don't need to exploit people to do that. You don't need to use new resources to do that. You just need access to the things. And one of the best things that you guys can do as future professionals or people that are stepping into your professional roles now is think about it in that way and challenge the people that you wind up working with to just step out of that box. The brand retail side, the current system is a linear machine. It's a hard machine to turn around. But it is you coming in now that will be the biggest change.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, but I just want to thank you all for your time today and offering very valuable insights into this 3-year project. I'm hoping that you will be able to return over the course of the next, well, 2.5 years and give us an update. It'd be really interesting to see how the project progresses and you know, to see each stage. So thank you, all of you. Really very interesting and really appreciative. So thank you.